Perfect. So for those of you watching this later, we got me and Zeke online today for 4:30 Mobility. If you're watching this later, we are using a prop today. We don't tend to, but I know you guys have been home for long enough that most of you have something you could probably use. But I'm using a foam roller. I think Zeke is usually using a foam roller. If you had a yoga block or even like a stair or ledge like I have in the back, that would be fine for today. The other thing you might want if you don't have a carpeted floor or a yoga mat is something for your knees, because we are going to do spend some time working on ankle and calf type mobility, a little tiny bit of hip opening, but it's more in order to test the ankle and calf. You will be spending some time kind of kneeling down on one side in order to work on the other. So those are the main things you need: foam roller or block or stack of books or a ledge that you can prop something up onto, and then something soft for your knees. And then lastly, per request of Zeke, since he's the one on today, we are going to do a little bit of rolling out of some tricep and lat since we have the foam roller anyways, just as a good reminder and some time that he gets to spend doing it. We also have, let's not forget, special guest star Latoya will be coming off and on periodically if it shows the gallery view for today. So also Missy Rowe might be here from time to time, which is my puppers. But if she's obnoxious, I'll kick her out. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do for warming up, like I mentioned, is we are going to test something first, but then we're gonna do some single leg stand work. So the test that I'm gonna show you is to see kind of where your ankle dorsiflexion, or where your just ability for you to track your knee over your foot kind of falls for you individually. So I'm going to slide this over here so you can kind of see where it tests. So whether it's a couch or a wall, some sort of ledge, you're going to want the ability to have a measuring point. And so I just do, I've done this test before. There's lots of different ones you might find online, just ways to give you a test or a check. I think we've done it before, maybe even in class that I've had people try it. I put one hand width away from like a wall, or even you could do the edge of your yoga mat and just pay attention to like how far, how close your knee gets to the edge of the mat, right? So you're going to have something that's a long ledge, putting that there. And then you're going to put your foot, your toe up to that edge, okay? And then, just to be sure, because you guys probably can't see me very well, I'm gonna scooch back away from the camera a little bit. So that 1 foot or hands distance, I'm gonna then be on my knee, right? And I'm gonna try and lean forward. The reason I'm having you do it on your knee versus standing is when we're standing, we tend to like let our hip open up or lean forward or collapse the knee one way or the other to test. And I don't want my heel to come off the ground. So I'm trying to keep myself square and level. So you can see I have my shoulder here, straight down from my shoulder, I have my hip and then my knee. So then I'm just trying to see how far, without doing any stretching yet, I can go before, if I try to go further, you'll see gap underneath my foot. So I'm gonna test that side. Okay, so right there. And some people will even go where they'll get to the wall, touch the wall, move back an inch, touch the wall, move back about another inch, right? And you can see how many fingers you get. And they'll keep moving back. So for me, I get to about right there. So I need to move it forward just a little bit more. And that right there, without me changing the angle of my hips, is how far I can get from the wall without my heel starting to come off the ground. So for you, if you want to, you can either go, again, if you don't have a wall, you can put your hand on an edge and see how close you can get to where you see your yoga mat. If you do have a wall, you can start at the ledge and see how far you can get before your heel comes up. So test that, test one side. Okay, then you're going to test the other side. You might notice a big difference. So I always start with the full hand just to see if, you know, ambitions are high. If I can get it, I get even further away on this one, pretty far away. So then I'm going to go, for me personally, since we're retesting today, I'm going to go against it, move back, go against it. You can even just see how tight everything is on here. I just did a backpacking trip yesterday, or the last 3 days. So I definitely am tight through there. Still touching. And you'll notice I even start to almost collapse in this way a little bit. That foot starts to wrinkle there. So I need to go back a little bit to keep it good. And then that's about where I can touch. So on this side, I get about 3 fingers. On the other side, I got 3.5 as far as thickness. Okay, so Zeke, since you're the one on with me, did you test yours? Were you able to test yours out and see kind of where you were at? Kind of, oh, perfect. You have a little example there where you can go, great. So this is a great example, guys. He's using, I think it looks like a chair or a stool, just anything that gives you a relative ratio or comparison for how far you can get. And then just pay attention to how tight it feels while you're doing it, where you feel your tension, what seems to be your limiting factor. Okay, if you go super far, maybe watch and see how far can you go before you actually are letting your foot collapse in order to achieve distance. So that's something else to pay attention to. Some people be like, oh, I can go really far, but the whole time their foot, maybe their heel's down, but their foot's collapsing in like this, or their knees going in to get to the wall, or they're turning out to get to the wall. So maybe your test is, how can I have good arch integrity and still get there? And how far can I go before that stops me, before I start to collapse one way or the other? Okay, so maybe that's what you're paying attention to today. So that's your focus. Today's a little bit of a stretching day for sure, and mobility on a joint, but we're going for integrity today too. Okay, so now Zeke, go ahead and grab your foam roller. And we're gonna try, again, these things have been done before. You can find some of these things online or different protocols for this stuff on YouTube, okay? But you're gonna take this foam roller, first of all, going on top of it, being very careful. If you're someone that's not very balanced or stable, right? Maybe you sit in a chair and you have your foot down on it, and that's fine. But I'd love for you to be able to challenge this. Be careful not to like, whoop, slide out from under, okay? But first things first, let's just roll out the bottom of the foot, okay? So I'm not worrying about dropping my ankle down. I might feel a bit of a stretch. I'm letting it really be all about my foot on this one. So from the front, I'm letting myself really get that splay through the foot. I'm letting it round up and over, and I'm just kind of going with it. I'm also, just because I'm tight through here, again, from doing that pack trip, my hip flexors are really on one, and that can also affect it. I'm letting myself stretch a little bit. This is where we're spending time on the knee. So again, if you want a mat, let it feel kind of like rolling all the way forward, all the way back, and don't worry about it having to be through the ankle. If you need to spread your leg out in front of you, I'll show you this way again. If in order to hit the foot, you need to let it go like that instead of being right over it because of stability or ankle limitations, that's fine. We're not at that point yet. So you can roll the foot whichever way you want. You want to roll a little to the outside, roll a little to the inside. If you're not sore through the foot at all, just think of this as a way to like decompress and let your foot splay. It might not feel like it's doing anything for soreness, and that's okay, right? Go ahead and switch sides. So again, other side, just the foot itself. Letting it just, if nothing else, splay those feet, letting them be over something, because we don't have, usually have a hard floor that we come to a dead stop instead of something that lets our foot splay over it. A lot of times people that get used to wearing really cushy shoes that hold everything in place and all squished together like this, then we'll go walk over uneven ground like sand or gravel, or they'll be in an uneven trail, and all of a sudden they'll talk about their front foot, their forefoot hurting, because they're so used to this happening that then when they let it spread and splay, their body feels like it's extra sore. So give it some time of just letting your foot kind of fall over the foam roller. We don't spend a lot of time doing the specific foot stuff, but I got asked to do some last week and weeks in the past, and so I figured I'd throw out some new ones, always keeping it varied for you in case different things work for different people. You can even get your toes a little bit, right? If you want to hold on to that a little and let the foam roller, it's a little bit softer than doing it on the ground. Play around with it, right? And again, I kind of go to the side a little, to the inside, get that arch. It's a little more gentle today than doing it. Some of you might do it over a cross ball sometimes. This is a little bit more gentle. Okay, we're gonna go back to the first foot. So we're gonna put that first foot on there. And then what I want you to do on this one is about getting some stretch to the calf, but more so not about stretching the calf forward, but about dropping the ankle and the calcaneus, this guy right here, down, right? So some of you, this might feel like a stretch. This might feel like a lot. So you might just be pulling down, pushing down, trying to push that ankle downward. Others, if it's me, for example, I'm having to really kind of almost pull myself into the foam roller, pushing my knee forward while this drops with gravity off the edge of the foam roller. Look, it also gives you this nice lift through the foot with that nice normal rounded transverse arch that you should have in your foot, right? While I'm pushing this down. Some of you might be able to go pretty far into the foot. When I get there, I almost slip off with where my big toe is because I don't have enough drop through my ankle. It's just like rock solid through these tendons and ligaments through here, and that's fine. That maybe I go up a little bit more, and instead I'm really just trying to push down through. Some people even might pull up a little on this cross part and really push themselves down through the knee, right? So you're just playing around with it. You can rock and roll sideways a little bit, and you're just really, you can even push your hand kind of in on top and try and push down as you also try to sink down. Everybody's a little bit different. There's all sorts of different principles on this. It's linked towards something called Mulligan technique, even where you're pushing backwards while you do it. Everyone's a little different with what they use. Nothing fancy today. Spend some time. I'm even pulling up on my big toe a little bit while I sink down so that I get even a little more stretch on the inside of that. And I'll show you when we're on the other side. Go ahead and switch carefully. Maybe roll your foot out for a second and then switch. So then we'll go up to the other side. Again, if you have a really soft foam roller, maybe using something a little harder, like putting it up on the ledge of a stair, like I have back there, or on the sides of a book. Just don't let the book slide, okay? If you had borrowed a weight plate, like a 45-pound plate might work for this, okay? Now again, I'm on this side, so I can maybe start here, and I'm pushing down, really trying to get that stretch, leaning forward, but then trying to drop that heel down, using it as kind of a deficit. But instead of my hamstrings and everything in my upper calf being involved, this really is about this area. It's also about just gravity helping to slide and shear that backwards. So again, maybe I'm pushing down, pulling down through here, right? So cupping that heel, pulling down. Maybe for me, I'm grabbing my foot just like this on both sides and pushing with my chest down into my knee to add some weight downward, right? That's fine too. And then the other thing, like I said, I might do is maybe get a little deeper stretch by pulling that big toe up so that I'm also getting that flexor hallucis longus a little bit stretched. And then again, I can kind of roll back and forth, forward, backward a little bit. This one's a lot harder for me to hold because I feel a lot more tightness in this hip. So for me, this hip is almost limiting me from pushing down into this ankle, right? So everything's a little different, but I can already see just looking from when I first started, I was about here, and now I'm dropped just a little bit more. So just play around with those differences. See if the stretch feels like a little less in the heel. A little bit longer on this side. Again, if you haven't already, maybe you roll it forward a little bit, then pull the toe up. Play around with it a little bit. Maybe you roll it back and try to drop a little lower. Maybe you're pushing down or pulling back a little, that's fine. Okay, carefully, again, maybe stretch it out for a second and then come on out of it. Okay, the next one you're gonna do, I'm gonna show you from this angle. It's very similar, but now we're gonna work with some of this, the slide and glide versus just the forward and backwards. So what this means for you guys, when we bend our foot this way, this bone, our tibia, is actually directing backwards. As we bend back, that slides back. And this bone down here, your talus or talus, depending on what part of the world you're from, is sliding forward. So it's almost like this type of motion in order to go this way, right? Makes sense to you guys, right? So in relative response, we can also, looking at it from the side, we can also slide and glide where the lower bones, like the calcaneus and the talus, go one way, and this bone goes the other way. So when it comes to rotating, tibial rotation, right? If this is rotating here, and this wants to rotate down so that we can keep our big toe in place while we squat, for example, we need that motion, right? So this coming this way and this rotating out. So that's what we're gonna do now, is we're gonna coax it into that position, which is why I'm gonna show you from this angle. So we're gonna use that little bit of positioning like we had before, where we're dropping the heel down. So we're getting a little bit of stretch, just like as if we were maybe in a squat, for example, bottom of a squat. But then while on the bottom of the squat, we want that foot, right, to be rotated down this way, right? We want to have it so that that big toe stays down, that arch is there, and then we can push out on this guy. So what you can do is you can grab this hand and rotate, so rotating down, tractioning down while you push over with your hip. You can try to keep that big toe down if you can. If that's too difficult, you can also push out with this side and rotate with this. So like that. This is the way I tend to do it. My roommate, when we play around with it, because a lot of times we'll test things out and then I decide to give them to you guys, he liked doing it where he pulled down, and then he pushed out with his elbow. So you guys can choose either. So go ahead and hang out in that position. And it might not feel like it's going very far. For him, he said, because again, he's not trained in a manual therapy like I am, where I feel little differences. For him, he said it just felt like more he just blocked his foot from coming with him when he pushed out. So he just felt like, yeah, I feel my knee move. And then when my foot wants to follow, I just push against it. So just like that. And that's how he feels like he's getting it. He doesn't feel like he's actively moving his foot one way or the other. He just feels like he's preventing it from following his femur and his tibia. And that's fine. So play around with that one. These might be a little tricky. This might be slow going for you. And that's fine. It's just a day to learn about our bodies. Let's go ahead and carefully switch the other side. Okay. You might need to roll your foam roller so you're not always in the same spot while that foam kind of pops back up after a bit. So switch to a different spot. Okay, same thing on this side. So remember, when we squat, if we want to keep our toes down while our knee and our tibia have to rotate out to squat and bend, then that means we want to take it, again, a little bit backwards and off the edge so that we got that deep bend like we would at the base of a squat. And then I'm going to take this hand, because this is my style personally, right, where I rotate it, or like Wes said, my roommate, he just blocks it from rotating outward and then he pushes out, right? So options are this hand blocking this way, right? So we're right on top of that foot, blocking this way, leaning into it like a squat, and then pushing out. And as I feel like it wants to go, I go to where I can stop and kind of meet in the middle, right? If I didn't block my foot, I'd roll out like this. So instead, I'm blocking where it needs to be and then pushing wherever I can get to. Okay, so there's that option. The other way, again, if you liked it the way that he does it, he uses the inside hand and rolls it, or rolls it, whichever way works for you, holds it, uses his elbow, and pushed out. There's your options, doesn't really matter. Big goal is that you're trying to keep that foot rounded and level while you push out. You'll notice I don't get very far with this side compared to the other, no matter what way I do it. And then I can really try to sink in with it. Okay, go ahead and relax. Last thing we're gonna do before I have you stand up and balance some stuff out is now you're just gonna go ahead, and we've done these before, a nice big sprawl and plant on the floor. And then we're just going to roll around in little half circles, but I'm not gonna let my foot come up. And I'm gonna go in and out. So I'm really trying to keep it and let it go both ways. So I'm getting input into my foot all the way around, but I'm trying to keep my foot for the most part down. And I'm gonna go in multiple directions. So here's what it looks like straight on. Again, I'm not rolling my foot off. I'm not rolling my foot off. I'm keeping this planted a bit as if I were like having to shift my weight, if I were holding weight and standing up without letting my foot come off the ground. So now from the side, what this looks like, right, is big foot, is big toes planted, everything's there. I roll in, I roll around, whatever you guys feel like you need. You can roll inward a little as long as it doesn't hurt your knee or your hip. I'm just giving input to my body on how to keep my foot planted no matter where my weight is shifted. A lot of times we get in this thing, again, because we're usually stuck in one puffy shoe that like is a big cloud, that our foot just gets to kind of roll around in the shoe like this as we walk, or like this as we walk, because it doesn't have to stay in contact because the shoe's so squishy, it takes care of it for you. But we need to have that input all the way around on the foot. Go ahead and switch sides. And you should be feeling some of this up into your hips, and you might not be able to get a very big circle, and that's fine. You might not get very far forward. I'm getting more forward than I would have at the beginning. And then I really, on that one, when I did that, did you see that it wanted to come up? And then I had to really mentally watch my video to think, oh, I need to make sure I push that down. Because it's okay that I'm bowing in right now. I'm not holding weight. I'm exploring all ranges of motion that my joint might ever come in contact with when I'm walking, when I'm running, and just getting it used to variable movement patterns it might encompass so that it can be ready for it. Okay, good. So a little bit of rounds in through there. Okay, now we're gonna stand up. We've done these ones before. I would hold on to something. I'm gonna hold on to my door handle right here, okay? Depending on your balance level, you might wanna hold on to something more like an actual like chair or a couch or a wall that doesn't move like my door does. I just need it for a little input. You're gonna do a big sprawl and spread, slight bend through the knee, a little tibial rotation, right? So we're not letting it collapse in. And you're gonna balance on that leg, hinge over, and then practice kind of opening up. So we're activating the hip. I'm not letting my leg drift in, really trying to open up and stay in contact. We've been playing around with all of that this whole time. So it's a nice single leg bend, single leg hip hinge. I'm just opening it up because I don't want our hips to negate all that work we did. So from the side, what this looks like, again, nice and planted, slight bend, core is braced, single leg hinge, and then I'm just opening and closing through that hip, making that pelvis balance and heating up down in that calf and quad. So anywhere from like 5 to 7 of those, whatever you're feeling. Okay, and then other side. Let's go ahead and plant that guy down. Nice little bend, a little bit of tibial rotation, but look, my foot's still in touch. I'm not opening it up and I'm not collapsing it in. I'm getting that nice torque and activation through, and then I'm opening up through the hips while my foot and knee and tibia stay down. So I have that hip hinge where I'm still braced. I don't even feel this in my back. I feel it all in my hips. Some sides open easier than others, right? If I wasn't facing the camera, I might face the other way so I could hold the handle with this hand, just so I could really push myself open, but that's fine. I'm gonna turn this way again so you can see it on the other side. Let's do a few more. Slight bend, turned and torqued, so I have that nice hinge and I have that nice arch in my foot, opening up and through, leveling off my hips, getting some heat going through all the way down. Okay, last thing we're gonna do is you're gonna roll up onto some calf raises and then heel, and then calf, and then heel. If you want, if you can bend the knee a little and still bring your toes up, that's even more challenging for people like me. A lot of times we bring it up because we straighten the leg. So if you want to hold on to something even and bring the foot off the ground, the forefoot, without fully having to straighten your knee to do it, that's a nice extra challenge for your anterior tib muscle, which is right here. Notice my knees still have to go back a little to get them off the ground. Let's do 5 more. But I'm trying not to just commit to straightening my knees like this to get them off the ground. Really try and keep your knees a little bit bent to really activate and challenge. Good. Okay. Shake it out. I know lots of really silly little focuses on feet and calves and ankles, and we're going to retest. So Zeke, pull your chair over. I'm going to move this over so y'all can see for me. Okay, and now since I already know I wasn't a full hand length away at all, and I have a wall to compare to, I'm going to do the thing where I start, walk it back, start, walk it back, see how far I can go before I then pick my heel off the ground. Okay, so first things first, I try to make sure hips are square, right? No cheating by opening up like that, okay? So hips are square. Scoot back a little for you guys. And then from the wall, I'm gonna lean in, no problem. Scooch back a little, nice spread through the foot. Lean in, notice I'm trying to stay in line, I'm not opening up. Good, I'm already now past where I was, touched, sweet. Also, don't feel nearly as much pulling, so that's really nice. A little bit further, and right there is where I barely nick it. Right there, you can see a little tiny bit is starting to unweight the carpet. So that's about as far as I got. So if I go a little bit further, right there, I just got 4 full fingers on this side and didn't feel any tension. Even when my heel did start to lift, I didn't feel any pulling. So that's me. And check the other side. So Zeke, go ahead and check your other side if you haven't already, because we're going to compare these together on screen for those watching later. Okay, so now I'm going to check it all the way against, keeping myself level. Going back. Good. And it might be a very minimal difference. It might be a centimeter different, but it might feel better. And a centimeter is a big difference when you think about how much travel you get on it. So that right there is where I start to lose a little heel tension. Most of you might even be up a little higher before you notice it. I'm just used to noticing it a little bit sooner and pickier. But for this side, I got, about four fingers and like half a thumbnail on that other side. So great. Okay, Zeke, once you're done testing, no rush, finish your test, be picky. I'm gonna have you come on and tell us if you noticed anything different.
Like the distance was a little bit more, but it just like I didn't feel the tension as much. It was like way easier.
Great, because sometimes too people already have a decent tension or lack of tension. They have a pretty decent distance, but they have to like cheat and drop their foot because the tension's there. So then they might not get much more distance out of the joint, but they get it with less tension across the back, or they can stay more straightforward or not drop the ankle. So there's all sorts of little ways, like you said, of feeling progress that you didn't notice as big a difference as I did. Whereas I noticed a finger and a half on one and a little over a finger on the other distance change. Yeah. But your biggest thing you noticed was you didn't feel the tension anymore, right? Yeah. Quite the same. And even still a little bit of change in how it was. So I'd be interested to see if I was there watching with my nitpickiness, if I also maybe even noticed a difference in the integrity of how you got to that position. You might not have been turning your hips as much that you didn't realize at the beginning. You might not have been dropping like your foot a little bit. All sorts of different things that when it comes to adding heavy weight to something and the benefit in the mobility we just gained is now a better integrity or less likely for injury. So awesome. I'm glad that you something different and it's not just me.
Yeah.
Also, like I said, it might not be a huge difference the first day you do it, but you can tell there's some. So now if you did it regularly before lifts and things like that, how much more your body might be trained up to those ranges of motion and be less likely to get injured, right? So that's something else too, that maybe if you don't notice a huge mobility gain, maybe you'll be at less risk of injury though from doing it more often. We're gonna move on to our last bit per request from Zeke of some posterior arm stuff towards the elbow. So we're gonna start with elbow, work up the tricep, and then hit the lat last. So you'll need your foam roller for that. Let me check just to make sure we're good. Perfect. There's should be about 5 more minutes left. Okay, so open this back up. Make sure you guys can see me. Look at row while I move this. Okay. So you're going to take your foam roller, and you can do this multiple ways. When I'm doing the elbows, a lot of times I'll tend to sink down like this, and I'll roll through it and really low. Some people, flexibility through the the hips isn't enough. And so they need to just come down here so that they can really sink in. For me, when I really sink in like this, I get all lat because I'm not as flexible through the shoulder. So I like to be up and putting downward pressure like this through the elbows, right? So I'm not right on the tips of my elbows. There's a lot of nerves and stuff running through these structures right here. I'm right behind it. If you poke around, you might even feel a bit of a sore spot right in here. It's near something called your anconeus, okay? And maybe you do only do one at a time, right? That's fine. You might even find that you need it to be a little bit more sharp and you need to go right on the edge of that foam roller, right? So what that looks like is this, right? So I'm right on the edge of it and then I'm bending and closing. And if you feel stretch in your lat, great, it's an extra stretch, right? But find that spot, right? I can go sideways over it. If you feel any zinging, right, or anything like that, you might have a nerve under that spot. Move off of it a little bit or don't push so hard. And then carefully, so I just went from kind of right in the cushy spot behind my elbow, the point of the elbow, and then I'm moving up a little. You'll start getting into where that tricep comes down. So then move it and slide it up. And again, if this is too aggressive, you do the same thing on the edge. So go ahead and move it up your arm a little bit, Zeke, depending on what you're feeling. Move it up there and work your way up. And then I'm just bending and stretching through that tricep. Oh, feeling it right there. Especially if you did a bunch of push-ups or anything, buddy. Presses overhead and then slide down. Now you should be kind of right, kind of in the belly of where those triceps kind of come. And then again, opening it up. And then once you get to this part, if it's getting too tender, which mine's about at the edge, I'll do like 3 to 5 pumps on each spot. I definitely switch to the big guy, right? And then I get down to about here. Now, once I get to here, I am going towards the lat. So I will let my legs drop down and I get right up in that tricep. And I maybe am doing the arm up and back. Maybe I'm just rolling forward and backward. You decide. The other thing I also like to do, get away from it a little bit for you guys, is once I get to that spot, I go internal and external rotation on my shoulder a little bit. It gets a little bit of a cross pattern on that muscle fiber. And then you can also roll back to it and do it as well. It's depending on what you're feeling. I'm tight everywhere right now. Depends on what you're feeling. And then last part, work your way all the way up. Now you're sideline on that lat, right? Getting a little bit of lat, top of the tricep. You can go up and down. I roll side to side in it. It gets a little bit of your teres major muscle. That's part of your lat helper. You can also go up the rib cage a little bit, kind of right through here. And now you're getting possibly a little bit of serratus anterior, stuff that involves pressing and pushing. Sometimes a little bit of throwing when you're overthrowing something, which is what Zeke was chatting about. Hitting all those spots. Okay, let's go ahead and switch sides. So now I'll spend about 2 minutes on this side. Okay, so again, depending how hard you need it, you can start all the way on the ground. You can start like this, or if you need a little bit deeper stretch, go right on the edge of that foam roller and then open it up. Three to 5 times in one spot, and then I move it up a little bit. Ooh, tender. Again, any zinging or nervy feeling, move to a different spot. Move up or down a little bit. Moving on up the arm. This spot's real tender, so I'm going to do 5 of these. I'm actually going to go in and out too. So I'm going to roll my hand over and back. Get a little roll on there. And then now that spot's getting pretty tender for me. So I'm going to move it to the little bit softer, bigger surface area on this spot here. And again, you can kind of go side to side on it. In and out. Zeke, I'm just letting you follow at your own pace, buddy. I'm not giving you tons of direction. Just showing you myself suffering and figure you can choose your own. So let me know if you need any more input. And now I'm going to go all the way up to the top. So I got to do a little bit more sideline. I'm just going to stay this way so you guys can see what it looks like from this other side. Again, so I might roll a little. I might go in and out with that shoulder, but it hits different parts of my arm. Going up and down with the arm. Woo, a little spicy. And then I'm going to get to my lat. So I'm really side lying on this one. And I'm going kind of open and back. I might go up and down a little. I might go up and then roll to that serratus a little bit. Open the arm. Hopefully I'm still on the video. If not, y'all can probably figure it out. And then maybe a little bit back up the arm. Oh, yeah. Woo. Okay. That's about all I can handle. Zeke, if you want to keep going, feel free. Anybody else watching, take some extra time. Maybe you roll over your thoracics right now and lay over the foam roller since you're spending the time doing mobility anyways. Up to you. Do you have any questions, comments, stuff to add for anybody before I end the recording from today? Oh, perfect.
That was awesome. Hey, Latoya.
Did everyone fare well on the recording?
Yeah.
You said you're good though. Anything else?
No, that was perfect. That was really good. I was like, oh, I started sweating like crazy. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Real hot and bothered with lat work, and then with having to make my calves stretch and work, I'm definitely working harder to balance than I am to stretch half the time. But perfect. Hopefully any of you on the recording, if you have questions, again, reach out. I know it was a little bit more of a nerd heavy day versus a flow and move and just shut up and groove day. But if you have questions on those things, feel free to reach out to me or Angie and Greg. I'm sure they will know be able to answer any of your questions. So I'm going to end the recording right now. Hope you all are doing well, and stay safe out there.